On today's Locked On Royals Padres crossover, what is the new realm of baseball going to look like with these new rule changes? We're going to draft our favorite plays that happen in a baseball game and compare and contrast what it's like to be watching the Royals versus the Padres and the pressure involved in both of those instances. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Royals Padres podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Royals Padres podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles, joined by the host of Locked On Padres, Javier Reyes. You can follow him on Twitter at Javapeno. We're going to talk about the rule changes for baseball, talk about our favorite plays that happen in the course of a baseball game, and discuss where these two teams are at in their current state. So a lot to dive into. But Javier, how are you doing today?
I am doing lovely. I am doing, some would say, phenomenal. And I would also say exemplary. Things have been going well. I think you had the old Thanksgiving that just occurred. We unfortunately did not get to do our Thanksgiving draft, but that is okay because we found a way to do another draft. And as always, just in general, I'm always happy to talk to you, Rylan, about all things baseball. Despite our two teams not necessarily having the most in common with one another, aside from the former first baseman of both of our teams, the Wizard of Haas, Eric Hosmer. But other than that, it's just always fun talking to you, man, because I feel like we the sport in a slightly not too dissimilar way. I think our opinions on the general state of baseball are pretty alike. So as always, man, super happy to be here.
Well, it was actually a decision by me to not do the Thanksgiving draft because I just could not stand another year of you drafting corn squash or whatever you drafted last year. But we'll have this draft today. We'll have another draft as we get closer to Christmas as a little teaser for what that could be. Be thinking about what you think we're going to be drafting for Christmas. Javi, we have a lot to get into today. I want to first start by talking about the rule changes. How different do you think baseball will look next year with all these new rules?
So there's a bunch. One, we've got, I believe the shift is getting axed, if I'm not mistaken. So that's one thing that we can't forget about, because for a long time, the shift has been a constant in baseball discourse, right? Like whether you're for it, against it. I'm not really going to go too deep into my personal opinions about it. You certainly can. But that's going to affect a whole lot of players. I mean, your Juan Sotos for the Padres, right? Like for Padres fans, that will change things. The amount of hot shot ground balls past the first baseman that would be hits regularly, if not for the shift, maybe that you see a big change there. There's going to be changes all over the place, if we're being honest, for any amount of hitters. So we might see an increase in offense potentially next year, which is, I think, pretty exciting. It's certainly exciting for a lot of players maybe entering free agency after next year. But the other is the pitch clock. I mean, that is the number one thing we have at it, because not to be a bit, hyperbolic, not to be a Emmanuel Acho, you know what I mean? Not to be a Skip Bayless type right now, but it's probably the most significant change that we're going to see come to baseball. And I don't know, basically ever since they first added replay. And I know the first rendition of replay wasn't overall super impactful because it was just based on the determining what was a home run and what wasn't. But just in general, like one of the biggest steps baseball has taken. And I don't know about you, but I'm super all for it, because I like it when things go just a tad faster, because there's a lot for a young lad like myself to pay attention to, whether it be on the phone, whether it be whatever the latest thing the CEO of the Bird app is doing, whether it be my personal life, whether it be just the shows I watch. There's a lot to do, and sometimes I don't want to sit there for 4 hours watching, a pitcher have to, touch his back, and then, the batter has to adjust his gloves and go up and down and side to side. He's got to go by Nathan's hot dogs real quick before you throw another pitch. I'm all for that. Even if I don't think that that's the biggest problem with baseball, I actually think the length of the season than the length of the games, but nonetheless, it could be pretty huge. What about you?
So I think that the pitch timer is the most interesting because it'll be a mixed bag, I think. Watching it happen in AAA for, I want to say like half a decade now, it's been in AAA. I think that the pitchers that are young and came from the minor leagues more recently, they're already used to it. It won't really bother them at all that this is happening. For, of course, the old pitchers that have not experienced minor league baseball in a long time, they will, I think, complain about it heavily in April and eventually just get used to it, as they did with sticky stuff versus non-sticky stuff that happened in the middle of that season a couple of years ago. My biggest thing is the shift. I think that my hope is banning the shift creates more parity of hits and more ability for teams to score besides home runs. Home runs, I think, are fine and they're fun sometimes, but whenever you're literally just sitting there watching a game and okay, he's either going to strike out or home run, and that's the case for every single batter. And so every matchup you're just looking at, okay, will he strike out this time? Will he hit a home run? It gets boring really fast, especially whenever you're watching a terrible team. Like, there's no excitement there anymore. It's just not. So whenever you ban the shift and you hopefully get to see more singles, right, or see more doubles, whatever the case is, that it just, I think, leads to more offense and leads to more excitement overall, because the exciting plays can be more than just home runs. It can be a guy scoring first to third because someone was able to hit the ball into the gap or whatever the case is. So I'm kind of excited for the shift being banned. I'm excited to see who does complain about the pitch timer, who does kind of just get over it and move on and not have it hang over their head. And then also excited to see if it even matters, the pitch timer. Like, I think that the pitch timer will largely go unnoticed. Like, I went to opening day in AAA whenever it was first implemented, and we all were watching the clock and we were all watching the timer, but it never even really got down to zero. That was the first game it ever was implemented, and it never really got that exciting because guys just pitched, and that was all that they did was pitch. They didn't let it dwindle all the way down. And by the fifth game you went to that season, nobody even really cared about the pitch timer or even noticed that it was happening still. And so I wonder, like, how strictly this will be enforced. If it's kind of like a football delay of game where sometimes the clock's at zero, but magically they don't call delay of game. Like, will there be moments where the pitch clock's at zero and they just don't call anything? I just wonder what the pitch timer will look like in real time. Do some umps give more leeway than others in terms of when it hits zero and when you've started your motion, or when they believe you've started your motion? And then the shifts. I think that the shifts could literally save baseball. Like, because baseball, even for someone who is as a diehard of a fan as we are, to do podcasts about this sport daily and to really embrace watching the Royals, who are a terrible team, and the Padres, of course, are very, very, very fun, but to embrace the grind of a baseball season, it still gets stale and boring whenever it's literally home run or bust. That's just not entertaining for anyone involved. So I hope that the shift just allows more variety of plays to happen.
Yeah, and I think that it's funny because I think that the problem is home runs do rule in a lot of ways. I mean, it's probably the singular most iconic play that can be done in any sport. Everybody knows what it is. It's used in regular vernacular to mean all sorts of things outside of baseball. But I do think that it's interesting because what you mentioned about how, everybody is just strikeout or home run or walk, right? Like the three true outcome baseball. It's that baseball has become really homogenized where it's just the same type of team, right? And Derek Thompson, actually, of The Atlantic, wrote about this, and it's not necessarily news to someone like you or me, but just the idea that it's like, the funny thing is, like, the home run happy ball, like, it worked like fantastically. Teams score more, right? And all these things, but the overall pace of play and everything that you just outlined is what became a problem. And when you look at basketball, different types of teams, you feel like there was a scare where everybody was wondering, oh my God, is it just 80 million 3-pointers now. It's like, no, there's actually some cool different type of ways to play. You can have your Giannis and you can have your Curry, and then you can even have your CJ McCollums or your Zions or your Embiids, right? Like there's different sort of styles of play. Well, baseball, we keep seeing, like, it seems like everybody's just like, all right, you got to yeet that ball into Saturn in order to kind of keep up with the times and whatnot. And I'm with you. I hope that it changes the kind of play, and it makes the game a little bit more exciting, where you're like, hey, maybe there's different types of players we could have. We could have more, blanking on his name, Orlando Arcia. I forgot his name, from Minnesota, who like led the league in batting average, who is still a productive player. And it's fun to see guys like that. You know, your Tim Andersons, or this guy from Minnesota, your Jeff McNeils, right? Like a little bit more like that. And have less strikeouts of these guys who are just trying to pull the ball to the short porch in Yankee Stadium and whatnot. So I think really exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think that the pitch clock, I like not wait to see what like who is the buffoon that comes out. I'm personally, I think I checked the other day on Bet Online that it's minus 20,000 for Madison Bumgarner to complain about it next year. So we'll see if you guys want to go for that. You should definitely check that out. But yeah, I can't wait to see everybody complaining. But like what happened when the challenge was instituted, baseball fans predictably complained, yelled, screamed, as they always do, because God forbid we change the sport that has been the same way for 300,000 years. Then people stop talking about it, right? Like no one has conversations about the challenge anymore. They have conversations about specific challenges and whether or not they got it right. But I bet you on everything that in 2 months no one's going to talk about this.
Yeah, this I wonder how long it lasts as a topic of conversation, and I do want to know how many pitchers, like you're saying, how many pitchers are actually going to blame the pitch clock their first couple of rough starts to start this season, even though it will likely have nothing to do with how they played. But what does have everything to do with how you play is by going to betonline.net, your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Go check it out today with the latest odds, trends, prop bets. This show is brought to you by BetOnline. You can go there and bet on sports that are happening right now: football, basketball, pro and college, the World Cup, golf, MMA, boxing. You can also bet, though, still on baseball. If baseball is the only sport that you follow, that's perfectly fine, because you can bet on who you think Aaron Judge will sign with, if not the Yankees. So if he does not sign with the Yankees, the favorite is the Giants at plus 200. The second favorite is the Dodgers at plus 300, and the Mets at plus 600. You can also bet on who you think Carlos Correa will go to. His favorite, if not the Twins, will be the Cubs at plus 250. And then Jacob deGrom, if not the Mets, his favorite is the Braves at plus 150, and the Rangers are close behind them at plus 350. So you can bet on stuff like that over there. Also, got the World Baseball Classic in 100 days. They'll have World Baseball Classic odds whenever the time comes. You can also bet on who you think will win the 2023 World Series, with the Dodgers as the huge favorite. The Dodgers are a favorite by plus 575. So go check it out today at BetOnline. Javi, any of those bets stand out to you?
I recommend not doing the Dodgers if you like fun. And also because I don't want you to lose money, because the Dodgers don't win the World Series aside from truncated season. So don't do that. I don't know. Maybe put a little middle Cleveland bet. You know what I mean? Cleveland, not too bad. Unfortunately, they don't spend any money, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But I don't know. I don't have a vibe just yet. I do have some vibe for some free agents who are going to be good, but nothing on the Bet Online odds just yet. I would say just don't bet on the Dodgers if you respect yourself.
There it is. Go to BetOnline right now. BetOnline, where the game starts.
So there it is from the man himself.
We're back on the Locked On Royals Padres crossover, talking about everything under the sun. But now let's talk about, quite frankly, the different polar ends of the spectrum that we find ourselves on. So, Javi, my question for you: what's it like rooting for a team who is fun, who is spending money, who who is spending their assets, who is just in win now mode for winning at all costs, trading for Juan Soto, Josh Bell. What is that like watching them? And what's that like in the sense of, as a fan, mixing the excitement with the pressure of, okay, I have vaunted over AJ Preller on my podcast for 15 straight episodes, and now it's time to actually win the thing. What if they don't? What if they do? And that pressure of, okay, now's the time to actually cash in.
You know, it's funny because I love complaining about a bunch of teams that are consistently solid. I think they're well-run organizations from a scouting standpoint, a improving their players standpoint. You know, you're basically your Cleveland Guardians and your Milwaukee Brewers, right? Got so much respect for the people that work for those teams. What I do not have respect for is probably the ones on top, making the decisions that it is how I describe it as just kicking the can down the road, right? The Milwaukee Brewers did that this year. They were literally in first place and gave up their number one asset for, I think, Estrella Ruiz and some of the guys they gave up could be good, but it's a lot of could be, right? Instead of doing what most of the time ends up resulting in a championship, right? With the exception of your team, the Royals, right? Most of the time, you got to spend, right? Almost every time, those are the teams that are consistently up there. It's not impossible to win without spending money, but it's just that's kind of what you continue to see. So there's always among baseball fans, and I'm not going to call out any specific, media members and whatnot for sure, but it's just lots of praise for all these teams that make these smart, like little moves to help improve their team. Yet some of those teams have not been anywhere that tangibly matters in a long time, right? We got a lot of Kyrie Irvings going here, right? Where yes, they're talented and yes, they've got potential and they do cool stuff every now and then. I'm going to take back the cool stuff part. You get my point though, at basketball, right? And for baseball, the Cleveland Guardians, they make this nice run. But then what happens? They lose to the Yankees and you would think, oh, well, they just started. Let's go. Let's make the big move. No, instead, the Cleveland Guardians, the fact that they are more likely to trade away their major league talent than add major league talent is exactly what's wrong with baseball. And I am so happy that the Padres are not one of those teams. I know they haven't won the World Series, but there are plenty of these other teams like the Brewers, like the Guardians, like the A's, like I don't know, I can't come up with another example right now, but these teams that get praised because they're consistent. And my thing is, I would rather go for it and stink in this sport that is long as heck versus just sitting there and being prospect hugging and keeping this promise, telling your fans about the next great one, right? And when that next great one comes around, Jose Ramirez is 32 now and he's declining. We got to trade him and we got to start this whole thing all over again. It's kind of like the in Mario 64 when you run up the staircase, but if you don't have enough stars, it just keeps repeating over and over. That's kind of where a lot of Major League Baseball teams are. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my take of the day. All right, there you go. How do you like that analogy, Rylan? But yeah, I think that it's super fun and it's great for the sport. And the key lesson here is I feel like the Padres have really shown that this whole big market thing is a little bit of a farce. I know that they don't have necessarily the same competition, right, as other places. The Chargers are no longer there. They basically just have like the Aztecs for college basketball, right? But even still, the Padres are the antithesis of a team that has been blockbuster. We're trading for Soto. We'll even bring in this Hosmer guy. I heard he won a World Series. Whatever, screw it, we'll bring him in. The fact that we live in a time where the New York Yankees have been needing a third baseman basically ever since A-Rod left, and they're getting outbid by the Padres for Manny Machado. Like, that is so exciting, albeit even if it does reflect a lot of the problems with Major League Baseball as a whole. I am enjoying it because it also means that content is really fun. And it means that I'm always, any day, some news that can happen. Because AJ Preller, I've been begging him for years to kill me. And he has done everything but. So hopefully soon he'll finally end me. But it's a blast, Rylan. Long story short, it is super fun to be in a position where you can make trades and you can sign guys and you feel like the team really does care about fans and going and winning this thing.
It is a blast. It is a blast from the outside looking in for sure. Would you say it's World Series or bust this year?
It's hard for me to say that, right? I don't think so, because there are still so many questions. They're not the favorite to win it all by a long shot, I think. And there's still so many other talented teams. The fact that they are, in a way, just kind of in an armbar by the Dodgers, because you're not going to beat that team in the regular season, or at least it's increasingly becomes less likely, especially with the fact that there's all these great players available and there's only 3 teams that want them, apparently. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Dodgers come in and are like, oh, nobody wants Carlos Rodon for some reason? Cool. We'll just take him, right? They keep doing that every year. And I don't begrudge the Dodgers that. Hate the Dodgers, but I'm not going to blame them for looking around the league and being like, wait, nobody wants Freddie Freeman? Cool. We'll just take him then. Wait, the Boston Red Sox, famously very poor, all of a sudden can't afford Mookie Betts? Cool. We'll take him. Great. Take this prospect that isn't any good, who shares a name with the guy who was not cross town, but a rival of your team for years, and he's not any good. Shout out Jeter Downs. Hope he improves. But I think that's kind of my perspective, right? Where it's just sort of, yeah, I would love to win the World Series. Obviously, that's the goal. But just it has to be taken into account just how this is so much not the Padres. And that alone really makes all of this so much fun. And even if they don't win it all, the fact that you're at least trying and make it last year, if a couple other things go their way, they're in the World Series right now. And who knows after that, right? So for me, I don't like World Series or bust. I think there are other teams that it's World Series or bust. I don't think the Padres are quite at that point, because I think they're really establishing a culture that is here for the long run and is not just a, 0-1 Diamondbacks or something like that, right? Where they go all in one year and then that's kind of it for a while.
And I think that is the big thing for the Padres is you're hoping that this core of Soto and Bell and everyone else on the team can eventually win one. But this is kind of who you're putting staking your claims to. And then for the Royals' perspective, like, they're not making these win now moves. They're not going to go out and sign free agents. They never have. They can't really afford to go trade for a Juan Soto, because the only way a small market team can win is by having their own homegrown talent who you can control for 6 years. But the difficulty in that is the Royals built a historic farm system. They built a farm system that was widely regarded as the best in baseball and the best of all time in the early 2010s, 2000s, 2010s. And all that they got for it, for Hosmer and Moustakas and all these guys, Will Myers, of course, who you're very familiar with, all that they got for that whole combination of a farm system was 2 playoff appearances. Now, both playoff appearances ended in a World Series run, but they only went to the playoffs twice, and they built a historic farm system. That's the pressure that small market teams face of Aaron Judge will never sign with you. Like, you're never going to get Aaron Judge. You're never going to get huge free agents or anything like that. And even whenever you draft well, they're only going to be there for 6 years. So by the time you get to the major league struggle, by the time that they get ready to actually win, now you're down to like 2 years where you can make the playoffs. Of course, now it's different because of the playoff expansion, which wasn't there at the time. But the Royals have pressure in the sense of trying to draft better and get more young talent. The Padres have pressure in the sense of them trying to, cash in on these big moves that they're making. Javi, when we come back, we're going to have a 3-round MLB plays draft on the other side. We're back on the Locked On Royals Padres crossover. Javi, here's how it's going to work. You're going to tell me right now, heads or tails. This will decide who gets the first overall pick.
Yeah. I'm going to go with heads.
It is heads. You have one. Would you like the first or second pick?
I would like the second pick.
Okay.
Just to throw you off a little bit.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'm playing the mind games right here. Let's see. Let's do it, man. So we're just drafting individual plays that can happen in the sport of baseball.
Yes.
phenomenal stuff. It's almost like we had to come up with a third segment at the last second.
We can either do 3 rounds, 5 rounds, or 10 rounds. What do you want to do?
I think we do like I don't. Let's just go with it, and then if we get to 3, we still got time. Then we could do 5.
First pick, 1-1. I'm selecting a beautiful, and I mean beautiful, 12-6 curveball.
Ooh,
you can't beat that. Like a masterful 12-6 curveball.
Okay. I'm honestly surprised by this. There's a lot of like high level things on the board here. And I imagine that we're also not drafting. You can't say a playoff thing. It's got to just be in general in a vacuum, right?
Right.
So I will have to ask about my pick of whether or not this is eligible. But I mean, hey, it's a sneaky pick. I'm just surprised you took it 1-1. That's my thing. You know, so
it's the best thing I've ever seen.
I mean, it is pretty great. It is pretty great.
Like a masterful 12-6 curveball is the best thing I've ever seen on a baseball field.
With my first pick, don't mind. Now I ask if this is allowed to be drafted. Put the walk-off home run. Is that eligible for this draft?
Yeah. Yep.
Then that's what I'm taking. I can't believe it's on the board, folks. I mean, this is what you see in the video game trailers. This is what all you kids saw growing up. You're running around playing your t-ball. You're pointing to the sky. You know, maybe doing your Babe Ruth impression. And then you pretend you walk it off, and then you get to home plate. It's the walk-off home run because of the stakes, because of the a sport that notoriously refuses to allow personality. You have all these people gather around the home plate for some reason to just like attack each other and whatnot. And I think it's a blast, and it's what everybody kind of wants to see. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's been more exciting, massive moments in baseball that have had crazier reactions. Right? What comes to mind for me is the Tampa Bay Rays World Series against the Red Dodgers a couple of years ago when, there was the misplay in the outfield, and then what's his face?
Brett Phillips.
Yeah, Brett Phillips. He's the one who got the hit, and then Arozarena? He gets caught right in between third and home plate, and then he goes back, and the ball gets away. The great call from Joe Buck. That stuff is great too, but for me, it's the walk-off home run. Who doesn't like a dinger to end it all?
So you get back-to-back picks in the sneak draft. So you're pick 2.
Oh, really? Oh, I get the back-to-back. Look at that, folks. Look at me. I'm schooling this fool. With the next pick, I'm now going to take one that is in honor of my mother, to be honest with you, because it is her favorite play in baseball. And that is, it doesn't even have to be the best one in the world. It doesn't even have to be a diving stop, but the throw from third base to first base. Crisp, the camera tracks it well. Obviously, if you have a great third baseman, it makes it even better. It doesn't even have to be a big grab, but just the smoothness. I'm privy to this. Obviously, I've been watching Manny Machado for years, so maybe there is some bias here that if you don't have a third baseman, it's you're scared all the time. But for me, it's just the clean. They do this and then they whip it back to first, and it just looks so easy, and it's even better in person. In my experience. I am one of those people who loves watching, just like, say you're a big NBA guy. I just love watching these guys casually make shots, right? Like I like for them, if there's no one guarding them, that's not like the hard part. The hard part is how do you get yourself open for the shot and whatnot, right? And I love seeing that. For me, baseball, it's just the casual nature in which these guys will throw a ball like 30 feet or whatever it is, and that's just like the normalcy of it. And for me, third base, that throw, especially on TV and even better in person, obviously, that is one of my favorites.
Well, for my second pick, now listen.
Here we go. Let's see, folks. He's got to make a comeback here.
I'm going to go with bottom of the ninth. Up by 1 run. Okay. Runners on first and second. 1 out. Only up by 1. Ground ball in the hole. Diving backhand by the shortstop. Flings it to second. Second baseman grabs it. you've got a medium speedster. He's not Billy Butler, but he's also not Billy Hamilton. So now he's kind of in between. So the throw to first, very close. In fact, you can't tell in real time if he made it or not. But it's a double play, ball game over. The defense wins it for the boys, and you get to celebrate. The game-ending double play on the road, whenever the home team is at bat trying to rally, the crowd's putting on their hats backwards or whatever the hell the shoe thing was in Seattle, and then you just end it with a double play. That is ruthless. That is fun. Mm-hmm. That is perfect.
I actually think that it's sometimes underrated, right? There's something about the 1 and 2, you know what I mean? Like there's something about it that's a little bit more, like you said, it packs an oomph. I'm with you on that pick. It's a good one. Might have been what I took next, honestly. But it wasn't, of course, because my strategy's flawless.
So for my third pick, I'm going to go with, and again, we admitted our biases. My bias could be from watching Alex Gordon his entire career. I'm going to go with now here's my question for you. You had a technicality, I got to have one too. Can I go wall climb plus in the stands catch, or do I need to pick one or the other?
Basically just a ball that would be independent of everything would be out of play, making that
right.
catch.
And
I think that's
incredible.
I'll allow it. Yes.
Okay, so it's like Alex Gordon climbing the wall and then Alex Gordon diving into the stands in Chicago. Like that play, that type of play. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm. It's a real make you jump out of your seat moment. Because usually when you're watching your team and you're watching the defense, that's not when you're standing up going like this, unless it's a playoff game. That's not when you're going like this. You're standing up getting all crazy when it's the offense up because you're ready to jump up after a home run. But the catch, man, I swear the amount of times I've just been going like this, watching a baseball game, just kind of like wasting away, and I see someone leap into the air, and Alex Gordon, or I wasn't watching at the time, but the famous Jeter play going diving into the stands. Some fun stuff, man. Some fun stuff.
Well, what's your third pick, Javi?
All right. There we go. Third pick. I think I've got to go with rarity now. You got to go with the thing that you just don't see much of, and then you get the Bleacher Report notifications, and you say, "Oh my God!" and you can't help watching it. It's a thing of beauty. It's a little bit of that double play that you mentioned. It rarely happens to end a game. I think it's only happened like once, and it was the Yankees a couple years ago, actually, against like the Twins, ? I don't remember. For me, third pick, you got to go with the triple play. It's so rare and so satisfying when it does happen. You only get them like a couple times a year, but it is awesome. The only critique, and the reason I hesitated on taking this earlier was just because it's almost too rare. So it's almost hard for people to be like, oh yeah, I know that, right? Like it can never be expected. And there's a good chance you will live your entire life without watching your actual favorite team turn a triple play. Like that's how rare it is, right? Like, so that's the only reason it wasn't higher for me. But the triple play, man, I imagine you don't have too much beef with that.
So my draft is 12-6 curveball, the wall catch, turning it over plate in the game, in the hole to second base, yada, yada, yada. Your draft is?
The walk-off home run, the throw. It doesn't even have to be a great diving catch, but the throw from the third baseman all the way to the first baseman, and then the triple play.
I respect it. Javi, we're going to have everyone vote who had the better draft. I think we both have good cases. I think that we both maybe made a flub pick or two, but nonetheless, it was a lot of fun. Javi, where can they find you? You can find me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles, and of course, the Lockdown Royals podcast. Javi, what about you?
At Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. Of course, the best username on the Locked On MLB network, I will say. It's okay. Leave your applause. You don't have to do it now. Wait a little bit when you get out of your car or whatever. Then you can do your applause for me. And then at LO_Padres, Locked On Padres on YouTube. If you want exclusively Padres stuff, at LO_Padres on Twitter. And then if you want... What the heck? If you want, you could follow me on Twitter and see what kind of nonsense I'm tweeting about. Because it is the off season and I'm not all in on baseball stuff at the moment. But even still, let me tell you, folks, it's gonna heat up. I really do feel like we're heading for at least a couple more moves. We had the Jose Abreu news. You've got all these rumors about some stars from overseas and whatnot. I don't know, Rylan. I think it's a sneaky good off season. I really do. I think it's going to be a sneaky fun off season.
Well, there it is. And here we are. Until next time, be good and be good to one another.